Welcome back to Middle Fingers Up. I'm your host, Kieran. And in honor of Women's Month, we are having lots of intimate conversations about relationships, about mental health. And these conversations are meant to be real. They're meant to be raw. We appreciate the feedback we've been getting this month in terms of what women are really wanting to hear and talk about. So today's guest is fantastic and one of the many women recently that has reached out and wanted to join a conversation. And I was really honored. We really connected. And today we're going to learn a lot about her. So maybe what I'll do is I'll just start with, because I always go rogue. I have these notes and then I just go rogue. And so maybe I'll just go back to my notes because I get so excited. But being that it's Women's Month, there's really no better time to have these kinds of honest conversations. I think it highlights the pressures that women have to experience when it comes to marriage, when it comes to relationships, when it comes to our mental health. And today's guest knows those pressures really, really well. After a 14-year marriage and a transformative divorce, she's now a holistic relationship coach for Ranis, guiding Desi women through their divorce, to reclaim their power, to rewrite their stories. We're talking about her journey, the cultural baggage around marriage, and something she calls Rani rage. So let's welcome Mohini to the show. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Thank you for being here. How are you today?
Woo! Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here, and let's get into it.
Let's do it. Okay. So maybe where we can start with, as we highlighted, it's Women's Month. Maybe one thing that you can share is what is something that you think women need to hear more?
I think they need to hear more stories of what it's like to live outside of the cultural cages. That's what I call them. And to know that you can give yourself permission to do something outside of those boxes that we've been put in. Sometimes we don't know that we're in these boxes and in these cultural cages. And so it's nice to just hear stories of people doing life the way that they want to live life and not just the way that it's been laid out for them to live. And here I am. So yeah. I'm excited to be an example. And it was not an easy path. It's not an easy path still to this day. And it's true to me. And that's the journey that I've been on. So I'm excited to share more. And I just want women to know that they have options. I guess I'll share that I lived a very traditional life. And I was very much the good, quiet Indian girl. And I've shared this in different ways, but I feel like I just followed the path that was laid out for me. Whether I realized it, I didn't realize it actually for much of my life up until like early 30s is when I started to really question, hold on, what's going on? Because I feel like my life was I was very accomplished. I'll put it that way. I checked off all the boxes and I was doing all the right things. And all of my friends were also. So it felt a little confusing when I got to this place of asking myself why I felt really unfulfilled, even though I had all of these external successes like education and master's degree and marriage and long-term relationship and a 5-bedroom house and world travel and all the things, all the things that, especially I feel like in Desi culture, marks our success. And I'm putting that in air quotes for anybody listening, that marks our success because that's the culture that we live in. It really is defined by your career, and it doesn't even question, like there's not even space, it feels like sometimes, around, well, are you even happy doing that for your entire life? And it's almost like you make this one decision, whether it's your career or your life partner or where you want to live, and that is the decision forever. Yeah. And part of knowing that you have options means you can change. You are going to change. You are literally a human that is connected to nature. And part of nature is change, is evolution. And we don't necessarily give ourselves permission to evolve and to grow.
That's like so well said. I'm wondering if we could put you in that metaphorical time machine and just go back and learn a little bit more about little Mo. Like, I want to know how did she grow up learning about what marriage meant? What kind of messages did she internalize? Where did it come from? Whether it be the Indian film industry, whether it be from people around her, what were those messages about marriage?
Mm-hmm. Okay, so we're real and raw here, right?
That's all we do.
Okay, great. So permission to be real and raw.
Consent.
So yes, I had a rather untraditional upbringing in the sense that I grew up in a single family house. And so my dad passed away when I was very young, and I'm the eldest and only child, eldest daughter, only child. And so my mom and I were figuring out a lot of life together. And my parents immigrated from India, and I was born in New Jersey. So here I am figuring out life, as we all are, in different ways. And I imagine there's someone out there that can relate to this in the sense of you're figuring out, you've got your immigrant parents who are bringing over a lot of tradition. And then as a first gen, your friends are all going to parties or whatever. And I have to lie essentially and say, I'm going to go sleep over this in this person's friend's house. And really, I'm going to party. And I'm going to do things that I probably quote unquote shouldn't be doing. But it was a lot of double life in many ways, and how that impacted my marriage. I'm going to fast forward now. Time machine is moving forward. Yeah. So because my dad passed away, I had a big abandonment wound. When my ex-husband and I got together, I was a senior in college. So young. Didn't know right from left, didn't know up from down. And when this Prince Charming came along and liked little old me and liked what felt like very broken versions of me, it felt like I needed to take up this opportunity because he's so awesome and I'm not. I was very broken. I'll say like that. Like, I grew up in a lot of trauma and got made fun of a lot. I grew up in a very small town in New Jersey where I was one of the only brown kids and had spitballs thrown into my curly hair. A lot of racist shit. Mm-hmm. Do we curse here?
Fuck yeah.
Okay, great. So, so a lot of trauma, a lot of hurt and pain. And then when this Prince Charming, handsome guy loved me, I was like, oh shit, I gotta lock this in. And there was also a tinge of, he must see something really special in me. How do I make sure that this stays forever? And my conditioning was so much around long-term relationships because of Bollywood movies, because of rom-coms in the 90s. And I was deeply afraid of being alone because of my abandonment wound. And I thought school was forever in the sense of this is your career. You decide this is it. My friends from high school, were friends for a really, really, really long time. Now I'm in a relationship and this is going to be forever. And so my thought process was, you make this commitment and you're in it for the long haul, no matter what. No matter what. And to some degree, that's great. And also, asterisk, I feel like then there's no room for, hey, things are going to change. We grow. And sometimes we don't always grow together. Sometimes we're growing separately. And permission for that to happen. Things are going to change. And so a lot of my wounding is what brought us together, and his wounding, I'll say. That's what brought us together. It wasn't just me and it wasn't just him. It was us together having no clue how much of our childhood impacted our decision to come together, to be together, to stay together. And I just wanted to be loved, to be honest.
Mm.
And he did for some time, and it worked for some time until it didn't. And that's when I realized I had to give myself permission around, okay, this was working for X amount of time. It's not working anymore. And I'm trying everything. And to what extent? To what extent of my own detriment, of my own abandoning? Where am I abandoning myself, really? So it was a lot of different cycles showing up, and I really just had an opportunity to like check myself, because it wasn't even about him. If I took him out of the picture, what about me? Where am I abandoning myself versus fearing that he's going to abandon me?
Mm. I appreciate everything that you have shared. It probably resonates with a lot of other women from our culture. And I think you brought up a really big point, which is that we can call it that metaphorical time machine. But when we don't go back and, take that ride and figure out little us and talk to little us and learn about the different attachment styles that we grew up with, it's really hard to recognize when we're kind of fighting against it. And our culture is built on loyalty. It's
Yes.
really in relationships, all sorts of things. And so I hear a lot of that word when you talk about your upbringing and then your friends, your school, and all that. It's the long haul shows that you are a success, you're stable. And, in some ways that's what our parents strive for in their survival mode, was if you had that stability, then you were doing okay. So we pick up all these different messages as kids, and then we bring them forward. And sometimes we don't figure out until something terrible happens, whether it's in a relationship or in our life, that holy crap, it kind of in these cages, as you're talking about, multiple layers of these cages, and okay, I need to get myself out of this. So my question for you is, like, at what point, what did you believe about love, partnership, and your role as a wife?
Oh, I believed that a wife is a long-term, lifelong commitment around loyalty, like you mentioned. And I don't think I knew that necessarily. I don't think I put that word consciously, that was what I was doing, but I felt like I was constantly giving to the relationship, giving of myself. And again, like to the detriment of myself. I would give in the relationship. I would do things that were sometimes against my own against my intuition, against my own core values, in order to almost please him and please the relationship. And this is what a wife does. And all these different things around these expectations of what a quote unquote good wife does. And as someone who was trained very much to be this perfect image, right? Get the good grades, get the great job, have the nice house and the nice car. We looked really good. I'll say that. Like, we looked really good, and people said that we were quote unquote couple goals. And so to break that image was hard. It was really hard, especially when my worth was so tied up into who I was as a wife. We would always like host parties and host gatherings, and it was this whole image that we thought we had to uphold. But the reality of it was we weren't having real conversations like this. The people that were closest to me and to us, they didn't know what was actually going on, because we didn't tell them, because of this fear of, oh, their marriage isn't as picture perfect as it looks. So the pressure of keeping up with this facade, it's heavy. It's really heavy to just carry that. And knowing that people almost looked up to us, it was a whole different layer of pressure. And I think when I really reflect on just the conditioning,
Yeah.
the conditioning that we get from culture and society and religion and our parents, and then navigating, okay, the Indian world for me, and then navigate the traditions of the Indian world, but while navigating this quote unquote freedom of the American world. That's a whole different thing. But right, it was a lot of pressure. And then needing to then also uphold this American dream that our parents left India to come to America, that's the baton we need to carry.
Yeah.
But what if I don't even want to carry that right now?
Well, at any point, like now you ask that question, at any point along the way, did that question come up for you? Like, what if I don't want this? Whether it be the schooling, the house, the partner, all of that?
It came up internally, but that inner voice was so subdued. I had suppressed it so much.
It's like, shut up, Mo, you totally want this.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because that's what everyone else was doing. So why would I be doing anything different?
You're ungrateful if
Right.
you like obviously first world problems, all these kinds of things that we grew up learning about, when you're like, okay, I get it, but also I'm suffering. And that abandonment word, it's a big word, and it comes up a lot throughout our life. It's a word that we cannot abandon. And I wonder for you, at any point, was there that piece of like, well, if I walk away, then I'm abandoning my partner, I'm abandoning this life, I'm letting down the people that, quote unquote, look up to us, or this pressure that, you've put on yourselves? Can we talk about that abandonment? How do we recognize that that's a part of our heart that we're trying to fill in all these other kinds of ways? If you have any words of wisdom for those of us that are fighting that abandonment in all different parts of our, relationships, life, all that.
Yeah. I didn't know this at the time, but I had put a lot of pressure on my husband at the time to fulfill most of my emotional needs, because that's what I thought, when you're married, that's what your husband, and that's what a husband and wife does. You support each other, you hold each other in that emotional way. And that's a lot of pressure to put on anybody, for one person to fulfill that need. And so at the time, I definitely didn't know it, but I was like, our emotional connection was lacking. That emotional intimacy was very much lacking. And I think as I started to go on more on my spiritual journey and my own personal growth journey, I realized the distance between us was growing more and more. And what it really came down to was I didn't feel safe within myself, and therefore I didn't feel safe in my marriage. And that was a total mind fuck of, oh shit, like, what do I do now?
Yeah.
What do I do now? I don't even know. I don't know what to do. And it was so scary because, again, I didn't have any friends that had gotten a divorce. I didn't even know for the longest time divorce was possible, to be honest. I made that commitment. It's a lifelong commitment. No relationship is perfect. Every relationship has its ups and downs. And right now we're just in a down. But for how long is that down going to last? And it felt like it was fucking forever. And I was trying really desperately hard, honestly, to bring our relationship up. But the truth is, it can't just be one person. Both parties need to put in that effort, and that want to choose to make it work, and want to choose to, just choose each other.
Yeah.
And to choose themselves also along that. Like, it's not just a choice to choose the marriage, but I also have to choose myself and my younger selves and my future selves. Because sure, 14 years, like, I could have easily been like, okay, my life's over. I've given this much time already. Fuck it. But why would I even try to start again? And why? I mean, why not? Honestly, I feel like at that point, can you really imagine yourself being miserable and suffering, like you mentioned, for another year, for another 5 years, for another 10 years? And for me, even though everything looked really good on the outside, I think the lack of emotional connection and the lack of emotional safety that I had within myself that I was then projecting onto him in our marriage was something I needed to check for myself and like find other ways to fulfill that for myself within my relationship with myself, with my relationship with my friends, my relationship with just life, to be honest. I had this expectation that he would fulfill all my needs.
Yeah.
And it's a lot. It's a lot for anybody to carry. And it's not fair to him either.
Well, it's a setup too. This is a part where, do you even know yourself?
Right.
No like crappy talk towards our caregivers ever, because I would say a lot of patience and understanding of we were all children, really children raising children in some ways, trying to learn and all that. But I don't feel until I started, raising my kids, I didn't feel growing up, many of us really knew who we were, and we'd chameleon ourselves, and whether it's with the white Western world, whether it's at work or, our partners. But I don't know how many of us can say that came out of, being child of immigrant parents, that we were taught the process of emotional intelligence, learning about ourselves, how what I say and do impacts the people around me, vice versa. We were taught to be good. We were taught manners. We were taught to hide in the shades because that was all considered, as you said, you were this amazing good kid. But where in between those spaces did you really know who you were?
I didn't. There was no room for that. We were purely surviving. My mom was purely surviving. I was purely surviving. And part of that survival was chameleon.
Yeah.
But it was different versions of hiding myself out of survival.
Yeah.
If I made myself be known and seen and heard and held and loved and supported, that is all scary.
Yeah.
So those are all threats. So because when I was seen as the one tall brown girl in my classroom, I got made fun of. So of course I'm going to try to shrink and not be seen and not be heard. And funny enough, I'm like, and not be smelled, actually, because kids would make fun of me because I smelled like Indian food.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? Dude, have you smelled Indian food? Indian food smells delicious.
I know, man. If only I could go back and thank my mom for making that tarka all the time to make our food. I know, but what we know now, we didn't then. But that agreed. There's all these little things that I think sometimes we're taught they're in isolation. So it's like, oh, let it be or let that go. But everything is so connected as we're growing and getting older. And yeah, sure, maybe it wasn't the worst thing to be made fun about the one thing, and then the other thing was, but it all leads to us figuring out who we are, identity. And a lot of it is hiding it, morphing into what other people want. And then here you are getting married, doing the things that we're told to check off the list. And now you're finding yourself in the midst of this relationship where you're expecting your partner to fulfill all the things that you even said, he had a similar upbringing too. So he doesn't even know what he wants or needs or whatnot. And, we think, oh, we're married, poof, it's supposed to just be now. But you made a really good point a few minutes ago too about there's really none of these real and raw conversations because we don't even know how to have them. They're general, vague things that we're talking about. Or when shit hits the fan, because we can't keep it in, then, we go extreme, but there's no, what do you like? What do you not like? How come you don't like that? What's that? All those kinds of things we learn in today's school to get to know ourselves. Can I ask, what shifted during this 14-year relationship that led you to leave, to make that decision?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think a lot of it had to do with navigating how much I felt like I was suppressed and oppressed, to be honest, in a very patriarchal world that we live in. And I was raised Christian, and so was he. And so there's those layers, in addition to being brown, growing up brown in a very white town. And then exploring why, when we went to church, for example, there were no women pastors, and why there were no women in power, right? So these were some of the questions and thoughts that I was having. And then my ex and I would talk about this, and it was sort of just like, I don't know, that's just the way it is. And that's sort of where the conversation stopped. And so I say that because I feel like the way patriarchy impacts women, impacts brown women, black and brown women, especially in the United States, there's just so many fucking layers of how it shows up in our lives. And I think I was just so unaware of how many layers there were, and how much I don't even want to say holding myself back, because it was more like I was being held back by the systems, but then I internalized it as I'm holding myself back. So like, going back to the hiding, I was hiding myself, but also I was intentionally, by all of these systems, being hid, and it's by design. And I think that's what kind of fucks me up, in the sense of like, it's by design that women aren't in places where they can actually make change. And I think that's why having these kind of conversations around, when you're in a long-term relationship, for example, or even maybe this might show up at work, following the rule, like the woman is just following the rules that maybe a man has put into place because I said so, because that's the way it goes. And it stifles your voice, it silences you. And even if we've tried, like I tried so many times to express myself, but it always felt like it wasn't good enough. My ideas weren't good enough. What's the point of me even saying anything and speaking up? And then I'm silencing myself. And when you do that over time, long term, and this is not even within the marriage I'm talking about, like even just from childhood, right? This pattern started back then. And it's just showing up continuously in different ways at work, with my husband, with friends, whatever it is. So I think just thinking about how we hold ourselves back / are being held back, intentionally. I feel like once I started becoming more aware of that is when I started to realize, okay, if the systems are designed for this, I can either continue to follow that and then be angry, which I know we'll get into later, or speak up and show up for the versions of me that felt scared to show up, that felt scared to speak up. And to do it for younger versions of me that felt like she didn't feel safe enough. But now I feel like, okay, I'm much more grounded in who I am. And I need to do this for this version of me, the previous versions of me, and even ancestors, the women before me, who literally didn't have a choice, had to stay in unhealthy, abusive relationships, had no voice at all, didn't have a choice. That wasn't even an option. To get a divorce right now, this is a privilege.
Yep.
Many of the women before me, it was like, you just suffer and you stick it out for 50 years. It doesn't matter how miserable you are, you're just going to stick it out. And I didn't want to do that.
Yeah, double I hear you. Like I think it's always like this so sticky thing with that privilege, because there's that guilt and sometimes even that shame that follows that. Does that come up for you?
Oh yeah. It's come up a lot. It's come up a lot because I've had to, and even grief. Okay, grief was a big emotion that I didn't give myself permission to feel, along with the guilt, because the guilt is, well, everything looks good and I have nothing to complain about. And there's people that have it a lot worse. And so why should I even bother wanting more for myself? And again, another place in which I held myself back. the part of the guilt was allowing myself to understand that multiple truths can be true at one time.
Ooh.
That I could feel guilty for living a rather complacent and privileged life and for wanting different for myself. And no one else is going to hand it to me. No one's going to hand it to me. I got to do it for myself. I have to figure it out, and I will figure it out. And I'll also be held in community, different community, but in community as part of community care. Like, I don't have to figure it out by myself.
That's a huge thing if you are in this life transition and you can remind yourself that I don't have to do it alone, because sometimes that's out of sight, out of mind. Like you said, you're trying to show people out there, I got this, you can rely on me, all the things that we like to help others with, not ourselves. And I think that can get sticky, because when we don't think of the fact that there are people that will be behind me, I just have to be behind myself first. And I think that's sometimes a hard shift in itself, is having someone else's back is one thing, but having your own back, what was that like?
Having my own back, but also receiving, like, knowing that I can lean back and someone's going to catch me.
Yeah.
As someone who was raised and grown up in this Western world, hyper independent, I can say I will gladly and happily show up for everybody, right? But what about, it's not from a hyper independent state of I got my own back, but in the sense of I need to actually care for myself. Mm. And I need to receive care from others as well. Mm. And that's a really challenging thing for women, I think, especially who are givers, caregivers, taking care of everybody and putting themselves not even like in the back burner, but so far back that you've lost yourself. You've lost your identity. Your identity has been wrapped up in, usually it's first wife, sometimes it's career, sometimes it's as a mother, as a daughter. But when you strip all of these identities and all of these labels, who are you? Mm. And I had no fucking clue.
Yeah.
I had no idea who I was outside of those things. And so that was some of the things I really needed to explore for myself of, okay, if I'm going to take care of myself, give myself care, if I'm also going to receive care from my community, there's a lot of things that I got to strip away from who I thought I needed to be in order to be loved. It was a lot of unlearning. So much unlearning around this facade. Again, like this tough, this good girl, but also like, I don't need you kind of mentality growing up in the Western world, which was just protection. Like, I don't need you because I'll figure it out, because I can't rely on you, because I can't trust on you. So I'll just do it myself. Mm-hmm. But that shit's exhausting. That shit is exhausting. And I didn't want to keep repeating that pattern either.
Yeah, it's like it's like a burnout, like, you burn yourself exactly. out. Yeah. Can I ask you, like, in this, as kind of like a turning point, what was the most unexpected thing you learned about yourself post-divorce?
Ooh. Okay, I think the biggest thing that I learned about myself was that I'm really creative, and I expressed it in different ways when I was in my younger years. And so a really great example of this is, okay, so now I'm living in my first place alone, by the way, post-divorce, okay, ever in my life. I had left my career, moved out, got a bunch of new friends who are in like more alignment with where I was currently and where I was moving forward into. And I hang up my clothes in my closet, and I'm looking at my clothes. This doesn't feel like me anymore. Mm-hmm. It was all business casual type attire from my working days. Okay. And I kind of just looked at my clothes and I was like, this isn't it. I didn't know what my style was. And so it was very interesting to go through this evolution of my identity and how I wanted to even express myself with my clothing as a creative, for example. and how much I'd been like holding myself back in even my creative expression with the way that I dress, because it needed to look a certain way if I'm going into these professional settings.
Right. Yeah.
And maybe I would have a little bit of fun on the weekends, for example, and have a little bit more creative expression with how I dress on the weekends if I'm hanging out with friends or whatever. But now I've got this whole new level of permission to express myself however I want. And the fact that I didn't know was such an interesting point for me, because I was like, fuck, even in the way I dress, I don't know how I want to dress.
Yeah. Honestly, I bet this is resonating with a lot of women out there. It definitely is with me too. The whole analogy of your wardrobe is so fitting to real life scenario. You put on, the masks and you go and do what you're supposed to do. And even the part about creativity, that was really nice to hear, because creativity is like getting our innocence back, and in many ways it's like signs of thriving. We lose that light, we grow up fast, that innocence is lost in all sorts of ways. And a lot of people that are sitting in your seat that I interview, it's such a common thing to hear with how their light is like kind of relit. It's finding those things that bring you joy that we lose sight of along the way because we're driven, or we have to do the thing people tell us to do. And so I think it's such an important reminder of whether we feel like we can't leave a certain situation, whether it be work, life, friends, marriage, whatnot. Is there a space in there for us to go and find the joys that we used to have, whether it be with certain toys, certain nostalgia, music, whatever it be, to at least help us find that creativity? And I think the wardrobe, expressing yourself, I think that's such a good point. You're like the mental health stylist in that way of, okay, what is it that, I want? Can I ask you a little bit about the work that you're doing? Like, how did your experience shape the way you now help guide other women that are in a similar boat or experiencing their version of who am I?
Mm-hmm. Well, it's because of my own journey. Because I was caged in these cultural cages, I was locked in, and I realized that I had to free myself. I was the one that needed to open the cage, take the key and open the cage. No one else was going to do it for me. Even though unconsciously, I expected my ex-husband to be the one to do it. And I expected, like my mom to free me in some way. But it was everyone else's responsibility except for my own. When I made that connection around, okay, I can't expect anyone else, truthfully, to free me. I have to, and I get to do it. And also, okay, here's a friend who's going to pass me the key. Here's a friend that's going to remind me that, hey, you still have the key. You still have it. So if I'm that person for someone else, that's what I want to be able to do, and to continue to help other women, especially because these cultural cages there's so many of them. And my career, so I worked as a speech language pathologist for 14 years. So a lot of my career was based on expression and mental health and emotions and being able to express them in healthy ways. So how that shows up is, as someone who is chronically, I'll say, been silenced and suppressed, as many women of color in America, in the West have been. What is it like to turn up the volume of your voice, of your true intuitive voice, not the volume, not the voices of everyone else outside of us, but your voice? And what does that mean to tap into your peace and your joy and your sensuality as a being? Because we all have that connection. We all have that creative connection. And without it being hypersexualized, what is your true nature is the journey and the curiosity around, again, if we take those labels out, who are you? And if you don't know, amazing, great. Let's go on a fucking journey and let's explore. Yeah. Because who you are is in there. We just got to shed a bunch of other shit to get to who you are at your core. And a very simple practice that I'll share, or just like thought, is to think about what were some of the things that you would do as a kid, activities that you would do as a kid that you were just so engulfed in that you would do for hours and hours and hours. And maybe it was painting or reading or playing outside or cooking, or, what were just the activities that you enjoyed? Okay, so make a list of those. And then which of those are you doing now as an adult? Honestly, for 10 minutes a week, even. That's a great place to start.
I would imagine it's overwhelming for, even thinking about you, the way you describe how much you had to go back and unpack to figure out, like, who am I? And you mentioned gender inequality. And I'm sure this comes up a lot. I've heard it when young couples, even that are separating after a few years of being together, it always comes down to, she changed after marriage. It was something to do with her. She couldn't go from her parents' rules to her in-laws' rules, her. And the man's reputation is still intact. He's still functioning. He's got another wife on the, way with the kid and all the things. And I see so many women that take a gap year or two or whatever before they even decide to be in a relationship. And truthfully, a lot of times, they're tainted because they have divorce smeared on their face. And so who would want that? And so how do you help women work through that?
Okay, so a few things. First of all, your life is not over just because you're a divorced woman. This can be one of the biggest catalysts for your life and for your transformation if you choose it, if you want that for yourself. This is not like your life is over. And are there many layers to it and many nuances? Yes. At some point, you're going to have to let go of how many fucks you give about what other people are going to think and say about you. So at some point, that reputation of whatever facade it was, whatever story it was, at some point, your peace, your joy, your life has to be more important than how your life looks on the outside. And that is a journey. My invitation to you is just give less fucks.
If you can have people with you, it seems more realistic to give less fucks. And I think you've been saying along the way, can't do this in isolation. Even if you have one person there to help you give less fucks. I mean, if I had you, right, if I'm going through a big transition and you're there saying, okay, and having gone through it yourself, I think that's also key to gain support from someone that maybe has experienced it as well.
I agree. I've done this before, in my life, whether it was professionally or with my relationship or friendships, for example. I would go and seek advice from people who were not where I wanted to be. So, for example, if you're going down a path that isn't where someone else is, and everyone's path is different, right? But if, for example, okay, if I'm wanting to, this isn't what I would be doing right now, but if I were wanting to climb the corporate ladder, for example, okay, it would be in my best interest to get support and get some tips from someone who has done that. Could I go to someone who is maybe a coworker who is new and maybe hasn't climbed the corporate ladder, and can I talk to them, friend to friend, for example, and receive support from them and get some advice? Yeah. But if they haven't gone into a leadership position, for example, they can only give perspective from their perspective.
Yep.
So slinging that back to divorce, for example, if you're going to your parents for divorce advice and your parents are still together and they've been married for 40 years and they're not that happy, they may or may not say, go get a divorce. And they may or may not support you. They might say, go work it out. What else do you need to do? Because they're in the position where they can't get a divorce, for example. So I feel like it's important to really, if you go to your friends to get divorce support and they're all married, they can be there for you. Their support will be capped to some degree because they have not themselves gone through the divorce process.
Yeah.
And it is a journey. It's a journey. And it has many layers. It has a lot of ups and downs. And I think it's really important to just have someone, like you said, even if it's one person that has walked that path, even if it's an auntie, across the world who has gotten a divorce and can be that person for you. Just know that there are people who want to support you and that you can receive help and that you don't have to fucking figure it out on your own and that you're worthy of it. You're worthy of a life that is beyond the suffering and beyond the complacency, to be honest. And you get to create that life for yourself. What does that even look like? What does it feel like in your body to live a life that is a little bit more you?
So what would you say would be the first step to breaking from the cultural cages that some women feel like they're in, and so that they can choose themselves?
I think one would be to start becoming more aware of what the cultural cages are that you're in.
Self-awareness. Yeah, huge.
Huge, because you can't get out if you don't know you're already in.
Yeah.
So once you start becoming more aware of, okay, so I'm holding myself / I'm being held back in this situation, I would honestly kind of go through your day. Like go through your day from beginning to end and check with yourself. How much are you showing up for other people versus showing up for yourself versus receiving care from others for you? Kind of check that and see how balanced / imbalanced your day is, whether it's the amount of load, emotional load, mental load, workload that you do at home, that you do at work, that you do with your family, with your parents, with your siblings. Just check in and kind of take note of how much you're carrying.
Yeah.
It's quite shocking how much I think we carry and how much we kind of just do because we just do it. And what would it look like for you to get some help and ask for support, whether it's from your partner or from your children or from your parents or from someone else, and maybe it's you have the opportunity to, instead of you cleaning the toilet, for example, you have the capacity, the resources to ask someone to come and get a cleaner, for example. Or what would it look like to say, okay, you know what, I don't want to cook today, or one day a week, we're going to go out. And just the amount of load that takes off from you having to, whether you're doing like all of these things, figuring out the grocery list, going to the grocery store, prepping all the food, cleaning up, all of that's required. Leftovers, and is there enough, and all of that, all of the things that are happening. Check in. And where can you delegate some of those tasks to relieve yourself from holding all of that?
Yeah, I think those are good points. And I think sometimes two things that stand out for me. One is we have these responsibilities, the list that you mentioned, and whatever else is in there. And sometimes those responsibilities and those routines become noise. We fill our day and also have convinced ourselves that we are the be all and have to be the ones to do them. And the other part to that I feel when that noise, I got to do all that, is is because we're sometimes so used to doing some of these routines and things that fill our day, we don't really feel comfortable or trust that someone's going to do them. We expect them to do in the same way that we do, versus Mo's going to come in and clean the toilet to help out as a family member, and she's going to clean it the way she does. And that doesn't mean that she cleans it better or worse. It just means that, like, I have to start to learn how to let that go so that someone else can do it. And I think for a lot of the South Asian women in our community, we've seen that with the elders. It's like ingrained in them. These are the things that they have to do. And it's hard to let go of that, because sometimes when we have these responsibilities, whether it's our job, we're the breadwinner, we're a stay-at-home parent, whatever it is, when that changes, it's a lot like your wardrobe. When you talk about as exciting it is to get this new wardrobe, it's also scary because it's something different. And so even though whatever struggles the women might be experiencing in their marriage, it's like, well, at least I know these struggles. I don't know what the future could be should I leave. And that's almost scarier for a lot of women. And I think that's a big part of what makes them stay in some of these marriages and relationships. And I'm not sure if you have those kind of conversations with the women that come to you. Yeah, you're like, your eyes are like
Yeah, because it's all of that is our version of control.
Yeah, right.
And safety. And we want to know what's known. What's known is safe and predictable and within our control. If someone else comes and I go to order food, I don't know if that food's going to be as good as the food that I cook. I don't know if someone comes and cleans a toilet, if it's going to be as good as I do it, right? So instead of letting go and surrendering to it might not be as good, whatever that even means, can I just receive the help? And because the training, the conditioning is so ingrained in that we have to do it, all of it, like a fucking badge of honor. Look at all the things that I can do and how much I can carry. Letting go of that pressure and letting go of control. When you transition to a new job, you don't know. That's an unknown. You don't know if you're going to like it. You don't know if you're going to get along with your coworkers and your boss. Are you going to figure it out? Yeah. Are you going to try it? Hopefully. And trust that if you stay and you make the leap to try a new job, for example, and it doesn't work out, you don't like it, guess what? You can leave. You can get another job. Same with a relationship. If you are so scared and fearful, like if the fear is what's guiding your life decisions, is that how you want to live your life? Is that what you would teach your children? My guess is no. Is that what you would want for your younger sister? My guess is no. So give that to yourself. Yeah. The unknown is scary. Absolutely. I don't say that it's not. And asterisk caveat.
Oh.
Is it worth it? Is it worth the exploration and the curiosity of the unknown? There's a level of trust within self, within source, within community that it'll be okay. You will be okay. And how much do you want to continue to allow yourself to be unhappy? And not from like a shameful place, but can you shift into an empowered, I don't know what's going to happen on the other side, and I'll figure it out and I'll create it and I'll learn some lessons along the way and I'll try this path and it might not work, but I won't know until I walk the path, and then I can go right, and then, oh, that's a dead end. Let me go back and let me go another way. You won't know until you try it. Yeah. Otherwise, you're just going to be held back and you're going to hold yourself back, and then the resentment's going to build up and the guilt is going to build up and the rage is going to build up around, fuck, I'm still here. I'm still doing the same shit that I've been doing, and this is not where I thought I was going to be. When you also go into the unknown, there's also a lot of, this is not necessarily where I thought I would be.
Fair, right? Tell me a little bit more about that.
So, okay, I went from a 5-bedroom house, for example, with my ex-husband to now living in a studio, and I'm going to turn 40 this year. And this is not where I thought I was going to be. This wasn't part of the plan. My friend recently asked me if I was happy that I had left. I was like, yeah, fuck yeah. Most days, some moments, again, it has its ups and downs, just like life had its ups and downs before. But it's a different level of liberation and choice now. I feel like I'm much more me now than I ever have been my entire life. I had the privilege to book a one-way flight to India, stayed there for 8 months. That wasn't part of the plan.
New doors opened along the way that you didn't even know existed.
Exactly. So when we hold ourselves back, some opportunities just aren't even going to present themselves, / you won't create them because you're in the loop. You're stuck in the loop of everyday life stuff. And so much can happen. You can meet amazing people. Here we are. This wasn't part of my plan, but here we are, right?
Like, exactly, yeah. There's high fives and maybe no fives, but there's a balance in that. And like you said, that's regardless. That's life. Everything's not a high five.
Exactly.
However, there's new, and I think it's a really good example too about, yeah, now I'm in a studio apartment versus the 5-bedroom. Like, we hold on to a lot of these external things that we've been taught shape us. And that sometimes I think is such a big part of ending that marriage or saying goodbye to a job or whatever that is, because then if I don't have those external factors, then how do I continue to show my worth? And I think a lot of that comes from that whole model minority, the way a lot of our parents and grandparents were led into the country, whether it's Canada or America, North America, the whole thing about you come in with this level of education. I've been thinking a lot about, where did the whole obsession for our parents of wanting to be doctor, lawyer, engineer come from? Well, it makes sense because it was drilled into many of them as they came here. It transitioned into, you all have to get educated, you all have to do these things. And I think that's a big part of why our community looks at us going through education and all that. But at the same time, when we're cupping something so hard like that, it's not really helping us either. And I think we have to sort of slow down with that. And okay, sure, you live in a studio apartment, but are you safe at the end of the day? And safety looks like all sorts of things, and these big houses and important cars and all that. Okay, great. But like, people aren't even enjoying them. They're not enjoying all of that. And that makes me the most sad when I think about the women in our community who have to connect to those things. You want a good life, then this is what it is. And meanwhile, their self-worth is so low because their partner isn't able to give them that love in the way that they deserve. And I think conversations like this are so important because we need to be able to exercise the different ways that we can live our life. And okay, fine, you have a small tiny place, but is that the thing that is, you're like, does that identify who you are? And maybe at one point, but now you've learned that's not the thing that really describes who you are. There's all these other things that are actually who you are. And so I appreciate the fact that you've been able to shift that, because I think for some of us, we think, oh, that's so simple. But when it comes down to giving up those privileges, it's not easy. I see it. I hear about it. We talk about it all the time. And even in our own house, with cutting back around, okay, do we want to be buying these things? We want to be doing these things, the things that are making us as a family, or is it, like you said, the conversations we're having, those moments together, the safety, those are the things that make us. So Is there anything you want to add to that? Because you mentioned rage and I wanted to go on to Rani rage, but is there anything in this chapter, in this journey that you want to add?
Yeah, I would say that with these external successes, if you have this 5-bedroom house, and are you connected to the people inside the house? Do you have conversations like this? Is there an intimacy? And I don't mean sexual intimacy. That's a part of it. But is there an emotional connection? Is there a realness? Is there a safety within it? So with all of these external successes, I think just really reflecting on, is it bringing you peace? Is it bringing you joy? Is it bringing you happiness? And I think for our parents, that was not, for many of them, it wasn't even a question that they could even ask. They were surviving. And if you have the opportunity now, because of them, because of their hard work, to not necessarily be in survival, but if you are in a place of actually questioning things and you're able to choose to thrive just a little bit, lean into that. Like, what would it look like for you to not survive anymore? What would it feel like to move a little bit more with your joy, to breathe with your joy, to create a relationship with your creativity? What would it look like? What would that 10 minutes in a week, instead of scrolling, instead of watching a movie or whatever it is, just being with that for 10 minutes? Our people before us, like, maybe didn't even have that as an option, right? Again, like, just thinking about that. So if you're in a space of privilege, and we all have it to some degree, right? How can you use that for yourself, for collective care, for bringing a little bit more peace into the world? Because if you're doing all of these external things and checking off all the boxes, and you don't like any of those things, you don't like your boss, you don't like your coworkers, you don't like who you are in that setting, you don't like your partner or who you are with your partner, there's some opportunities for a lot of growth if you lean into that unknown. And it's going to be exciting. It's going to be scary. It's going to be real. And you're going to have to check yourself. And you might hopefully have some people in your life that are also going to check you with love.
Yeah.
Like, hey, you're doing that shit again.
Yeah.
Hey.
Yeah. Should you be so lucky to have people that care in that way, right? Like, I think
exactly.
That's an honor. And, we talked a lot about going into the time machine and visiting the past. And sometimes when we're in the present, it's kind of like the middle of our journey when we're in the present. And it's helpful to be like, okay, the future me, like, what would she want me to do right now? Because I can do that right now. I can give her that later when we go meet up when I'm 80, 90 years old, and she says, damn, good job, Kieran, for leaving that job because you were losing yourself.
Yes.
Or good job letting go of all those friends, like whatever it is. And I think sometimes we have to have that balance as well, because we do get to go back and look at the past and all that. And I do think that's important, especially to learn about our childhood attachment, as we've talked about. But yeah, what would that future me want me to do right now as well? And it's something for us to look at. So can I ask you about Rani Rage? Like, can we please make t-shirts? Because I want to make t-shirts that wear this. So please, can you do this? Let's shift. Yes. Let's shift a little bit. So when you and I met for a consult, I loved how you talked about Rani Rage. And I want you to break down the concept. Like, what is it? How can we embrace it in healing? Please share.
Okay, so rage, anger were not emotions that I felt safe to express. I very much didn't know that I could. I, again, just needed to be that quiet, don't make a lot of commotion, just you suffer in silence, to be honest. That was the lesson. That was it. And there's a fire in all of us. And if you are a human in any way, if you're aware of what's going on in the world, guess what? There's a lot of shit to be pissed off about. And is there a space? Have you created a space? Do you need a space to safely and healthily, two very important, bold, italic, underline, a bajillion size font bigger. Do you have a space, a healthy, safe space to feel that rage. And what I mean by that is there's healthy ways to express everything, right? So if your rage is being expressed by road rage and cutting someone off and giving someone the fucking and the middle finger, but like not in a, like
not
in
an MFU way, but
yeah. If that's you're expressing your rage, yes. Is that healthy for you and for the other person and for cars around you? Possibly not. If your husband is there and he says some dumb shit and it triggers you and you throw a shoe across the room, yes, you're expressing your anger. Is that going to help the relationship? Probably not. Do you have the skills to repair? I don't know. That's a different thing. But my point is there's healthy ways to express and then there's unhealthier ways to express. So Rani Rage is really about giving yourself a space, a healthy space, a safe space to feel the shit that you're pissed off about. Some of it's from your childhood. Some of it's from right now. Some of it's from the fact that you're holding yourself back / we're being held back / what the fuck is happening in this world.
Mm-hmm.
The times you said no when you really meant yes. The times you said yes when you really meant no. Whatever it was, is there space for you to bring up the rage and let it out? And I just feel like it's so important because, that angry Black woman notion that Black women have had to also suppress themselves, and in the workplace especially, I feel like as brown women, we have that version too. Mm-hmm. And it's all about this perfectionist, like we need to be tightly tied in with a bow and look a certain way and talk a certain way. And the fact that I'm cursing and the fact that you're cursing is like, oh, I've suppressed myself so much that at this point, my throat chakra is wide open. we are balanced, and the heat from my womb, the heat from my solar plexus, the fire, the passion, the purpose that I've now been able to tap into. When something pisses you off, that is giving you so much information on what's important to you. Mm. Whether it's injustice, whether it is, there's so many things, just
abandonment, betrayal. Oh wait, sorry, you weren't asking me personally. Okay.
All of these things, yes, all of that, right? All of these things that have you really given yourself space to feel how pissed off you are about it? How angry you are? That kid that made fun of you, that threw spitball in my hair? That time that I didn't feel confident enough to speak up repeatedly, time and time again in work meetings? I didn't feel safe. And can I create that safety within now? So that's the kind of shit that I love to do and love to create the space for, because I feel like South Asian women definitely as a whole just suppress so much of our anger. And there's some things that we can let up and out.
Yeah.
If we have the space.
Everything that you have said, like honestly, just I'm so grateful for that there's people like you out there guiding that, because like I know I literally wrote a list out this morning of like, what am I so angry about? And I'm at like 533 of all boom, boom, boom. And one of the things in there was like, it's such a protection. And the fear of like, and it's almost like grief and loss, a fear of like, if I let this anger go, and some of it is towards injustice, if I let it go, then I won't be able to use that anger anymore. And so something switched today, which was like, okay, so it's not that I'm trying to let my anger go, I'm trying to let my anger grow. I can still have it, but I don't have to lose myself in it. And I think there's so many women of color that just don't get the space, as you've said, all the reasons why, to share that. And it comes out in so many other ways. It's coming out on our bodies. It's coming out with the house. Like there's so much that we see in our elders. And I guess my question for you, if I have one in here, is what's the thing to do about it? Is this something that you speak to other women about? Do you do like exercises, or maybe even today, like, if there's one way that those of us that are holding on to it and it's coming out in, like, dark, unhealthy ways, or maybe it's not even coming out because it's so suppressed. What is something that we can do to give ourselves permission to allow it to come through?
I think what you said is a great way to start. I love guiding these experiences, and I take people through their own meeting themselves in their own ways with different parts of themselves and different emotions. And I usually start most of these sessions with some type of journaling, because it helps to kind of just start with the mind. And then we can go deeper into the body, which is where all the subconscious is. And it's actually, that's where a lot of the suppression is. And where also the emotions are being held. The issues are in the tissues. Heard of that? Being able to start in the mind and creating, okay, here's a list of all the shit that I'm pissed off about, and see what happens. See what comes out. Can you be open, curious, non-judgmental about what comes up and out in that way when you're writing? And then put on a fucking rage song. Open up Spotify, open up Apple Music, whatever you listen to, YouTube, whatever. Search rage and put on a song and see and explore with curiosity. How does your body want to tap into that? And you might need to put on another song before that, so you can kind of get into like a meditative state. And the journey I take is a little bit more like of a journey, but that's a great way to start, because then you can kind of just see and explore, how does your body want to express rage and anger? If you give yourself permission to feel it right now, you don't even need to mentally, consciously know what you're pissed off about. But it does help to have that list, for example, as an anchor. Oh yeah, okay, I am mad about that thing that happened. I am mad about this thing that's happening in the world. I'm mad about this thing that's happening with these people in power. I'm mad about my ex-husband never used to do the dishes, or whatever it is. But go and explore, and what you might find might shock you, and it might not shock you. And then what's underneath the rage? What's the grief? What's the pain? What's the disappointment that's underneath all of that? Because the rage might be suppressed, but even that's like surface level. Underneath there's more. There's other stuff that's bubbling up. And again, kind of just exploring what's there. Why is that coming up for me? And how does your body want to move to express that? Maybe you're cutting chains. You're making the way. Maybe you're punching the air. Maybe you're kicking the air. Maybe you're bawling your fucking eyes out.
Maybe it's all of it.
All of it. And let that be your experience. Knowing that for 15, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, whatever it is, allow yourself to just go in and see and explore. How does your body want to express? How do you move with it with your breath? Use your voice. What would it look like to scream into a pillow? I would invite people to explore their joy. We talked about that earlier. Like, what would it look like if after you put the rage song on, and after you put on a sad song that made you bawl your eyes out, then put on a song where you can just have fun and you let loose. And again, observe without the judgment, just like you did with the other ones, the other emotions. Where do you hold yourself back from your joy? Where do you hold yourself back from your celebration? And you're just on to the next thing. It's fascinating to see where our emotions are being held in our body, how we express them, how we don't express them, where we hold ourselves back from the full fucking range of emotions. If you give yourself permission to actually be human, not just this picture perfect image what would it look like to get messy?
What I like about that is that you talked about this today, and I think for a lot of the women around us, including, ourselves, myself, is that sometimes we don't even know how to be sad, how to be happy, and how to be awkward in it. So if you put on a sad song, I know I'm going to do the dead baby move and get uncomfortable. I'd way rather rage and sometimes even skip to the happy song. But the sad stuff, it's the question of like what's holding that back, what's getting in the way of that is really, really important for us to ask, because we like to sometimes say, oh yeah, I'm so open with my feelings. But when you do put the movie on, the music on, it is interesting. You're right about why I'm holding back is one thing, but just acknowledging the discomfort, even that, okay, I am awkward, and in giving myself permission about that's what's happening versus I'm not uncomfortable. I love being sad. It's great. I have no problem being sad. And I think, like you said, we skip through it so quick and we don't sit in that. And there was a question that we had asked on the socials, and you had even answered it. And it like that messiness, the middle is where so much happens for us. But you're right, we do try to fast forward through it to get to the polished part, and yet it's the place where the middle magic, I guess, magic middle, whatever you want to call it, happens. And I think like you lead an actual workshop and whatnot with women through this playlist, right? Like this is what you do. Can I ask, like, if you gave women a survey, a pre and post measure, like what are the women like before, and then what are some things that maybe come out after? Like what are they like after? You don't have to share what they say, but like, I'm sure there's energy that they come in with versus what they leave with.
Yeah, it's cool to see them. There's a moment, and everyone's moment is different, where they let go, where they say, fuck it. I don't know if I'm doing this quote unquote right. I don't know if I'm looking a certain way. Do I sound weird? Whatever. There's a moment and their body shifts, their energy shifts, I don't give a fuck anymore. I'm here. Let me be in this experience. And it clicks. And from that point on, they then let go of what they need to look like. And they give themselves permission to be in the experience. What would it look like? What would it feel like, more importantly? Because we are so caught up in intellectualizing our feelings. And we can think our way through a lot of stuff. And it's part of the protection, like you mentioned earlier. We do a really great job of protecting ourselves. But where the magic really is getting in relationship with your anger, getting in relationship with the grief, getting in relationship with your joy, with shaking your ass, with bawling your fucking eyes out with snot running down your nose. and noticing where you are comfortable. Like, where's your default? Like you mentioned, so for some people it might be, oh, I'm really comfortable. I cry all the time. That's not a problem. Okay. How's it to then tap into your joy? How's it to tap into your pleasure? Is that different? Is that new? Is that a stretch for you? Because if we're comfortable in the sadness, cool. But what's a new emotion that you can build a healthier relationship with that maybe you haven't fully explored yet? What would it feel like to actually slow down, turn the volume a little bit off of all the mind chatter, and connect with your body in the most present way? Notice where grief connects to your body. Notice where where do you feel that in your body? Where do you hold the weight of all the load, the emotional, mental load that you've been carrying? Where's that? Breathe into it. Give it a voice. Give it a sound. Give it an orgasmic sound. Give it a scream. what would it look like to just fucking play and be curious? And we just hold ourselves back so much, like so much. And then even just noticing in the bedroom, for example, how that shows up also. This is a completely detour, but it's all related.
Well, yeah, like this
We're,
is all connected. We're all, even though that we're disconnected to these parts, they all make us up, whether we love intimacy in the bedroom or not, and we love laughing or not. Like it doesn't matter if we do or we don't, it still impacts us in some way, whether it's good or not, right? So I agree with you, like, but that's the bedroom is usually, I bet, got the huge locks on, and you gotta do some kind of like puzzle and locked room experience to like get through that, because for so many of our women in our community, they lost that trust at a young age or at some point in their life because of so many, unfortunate issues around sexual assault, that power imbalance that's happened. And so we see that, even in the motherland, and how men and women are viewed when it comes to that. So that particular area, I think so many women would probably connect a lot over, in terms of no, that's not happening. And at the end of the day, whether it's sadness or intimacy or anger, it's our power too that I would feel like sitting or talking to. It's like trying to take some of that back and earn it back, or allow myself to have it, whatever it is, and however we process it, because from a very young age, it's stripped away for so many of us. So I cannot believe how powerful that would be in a room with a bunch of women, all ages, experiencing something like that together, and the learning that comes. Like, if there's a woman that's really willing to go there with one part of her emotion that maybe is scary for me, we talked about, if you have one person in your life, right? Like, what a role model to be able to see another woman sitting there really giving it when it comes to one of those areas. And here I am, like, oh my gosh. So, and
everyone's on their journey, and it's really cool to see. Like, some women have walked away and said that hour was 7 years of therapy. Like, I feel
bet.
completely different after that. And this level of connection and peace with self. And oh my God, I didn't realize how much I was holding on to. And I didn't realize that I don't allow myself to feel that peace, or I didn't realize how much shame I'm holding. And sometimes it's not even yours. Sometimes that shit's ancestral.
Yep.
And that's a piece of the letting go, is the more that you can let go of what's there. And almost, it's not even like letting go. Actually, it's more of an acceptance that it's there, and a holding it, like loving it, rather than fully letting it go. It's like, thank you for being there and protecting me, and what is the message here, and moving forward. So the connections that people have, everyone's experience is very different when they go through this type of journey, but I think it's so powerful because everyone's journey is very different, and you just get to like check in with yourself around, oh shit, I didn't realize I'm scared to feel my full joy. I don't even laugh fully because I thought I couldn't. It wasn't safe to fully laugh because I was fearful of being too much. Or I was called too sensitive, which I definitely have been called that many times. So checking in with self and like giving permission to feel the full range of human emotions, because we're not robots. Yes, there's AI, but still your human emotions are your real valid human emotions. And what would it feel like to create a beautiful, healthy, safe space for all of that to be seen and held and loved and nurtured, and so that you can move forward. Like, you don't have to, those cycles don't have to keep repeating.
Yeah. I know we're going to get a lot of women asking about this, and you and I have talked about the possibility of coming together, you like a little workshop, whether it's online or in person, and you guide a bunch of us through this. And I hope you're ready to pack your bags and do this, because this is something that is so needed. And like you said, what's happening all over the world with Palestine and the Congo, like everywhere, outside of North America where there's so much death and loss, and it's hard because, like you said, we have so much privilege here, and it is hard to put a smile on our face. There's a lot of guilt because it's like we're so fortunate we have all this, and sometimes you feel paralyzed because you're like, I don't know what I can do, and I don't know how to help, and you know, I can't even compare to, I'm just trying to share the load for the people that have to show up at work in unsafe places and they can't let go. You think about those women and what they have to do, even being here in North America, and that's their home and their families, and there's no space in these homes and workplaces and what for them to be able to express that. So there's all these different layers that of being women of color. And I think whether it's someone's pain many, many kilometers or miles away, I think the thing that we connect with is women of color. Like, we know because we've had our own stories, our own experiences. And so you feel it on a different level. And I just think of those layers and then our own personal experiences and the lack of safety to be able to allow ourselves to fully experience that. But the problem is when we don't do that, it's coming out in different ways. We leak like a little leaky faucet. And when that leaky faucet doesn't get its plumbing, then, you know, we have to spend lots of dollars to fix a huge flood. And I think there's a lot of women that are in that flood place. And so to have someone walking us through something like this, it's not going to resolve, but I think it's going to open up some, you know, give us those permissions or even like the skills to be able to take care of ourselves in a way that maybe we don't know how. So I think there's going to be something coming soon from you. And maybe we can also talk about, because I know we're wrapping up here. You also have a podcast, Ranis Radio, which is like also a t-shirt I want, please. And I know you get into these conversations, you share your own experience. And so maybe you can let us know where we can tune in and spend some time with you.
Mm-hmm. Well, thanks to you, Ranis Radio came back after being on pause / rest / in the messy middle, in the background of me figuring out just being in a very large space of unknown. And so I had actually, my podcast originally was called Enchant Your Life, because one of the meanings of Mohini is enchantress. And I can definitely say that I've been on a journey to enchant the fuck out of my life and to figure out what that means. And then to invite other people to also explore what it means to create some magic and create some mystery and not just go with, you know, the status quo. Yeah. And I had been wanting to bring back the podcast, but I wasn't sure. I don't know. I had a lot of hesitation, to be honest. It's like, I don't know what I want to share and what I want to talk about. And so all of the things that I shared about today, I'm also on my journey. You know, I don't have it all figured out. I don't think anybody does. And so I'm also human. You know, I'm still moving through my own shit. I'm also figuring out what does my next chapter look like. So all that to say, Enchant Your Life has evolved to Ranis Radio, specifically to help brown women have a space that they can have these similar types of conversations, like real and raw conversations, the conversations that I needed when I needed them. And we get to have them here now. And maybe it'll inspire and be a lifeline, if you will, for someone else to just know that having these types of conversations are possible, that there are women doing things, living life that are outside of the boxes, out of the cultural cages, like we've talked about. And what would it look like? What would it feel like? What would it be like to explore that for yourself? Yes. And so Ranis Radio is really just a space for South Asian women to learn, to be empowered, to explore, and to be in community. It's a big part of the work that I do too. So
yeah. I think it's so important to have these conversations, and there's so many different ways to have them. And I think as brown women, we are at our best when we can stand shoulder to shoulder and like support each other with this. And so I'm really, really excited for you to get this going again. And honestly, the name is like my best friend. I love it. Now, if we want to listen, is it where we find our music? Like, where do we go?
Yeah, it's on all major platforms.
Perfect.
So Spotify, Apple Music, iHeartRadio, Rani Radio, RANI Radio. And it's the way that I think about it is when back in my day when we had radio, you had to tune into the frequency,
Yes.
to get it just right. And I think that a lot of us are living on someone else's frequency.
Mm.
And I don't think I've actually put that into words until right now. But Rani Radio is really like, what would it look like, you as the Rani, as the queen, what would it look like to be tuned into your own frequency, your alignment, your truth, your life, instead of all the other stations?
Yeah.
Damn.
I know, man. You better write that down.
It's
going to be your tag. I love it. I love when things happen in like organic form, right? Like, and we have it recorded. So if you have to go, you need to go back and hear that. Then there you go. It's right there. So we have Rani Radio. We'll also put that in our show notes too, so people know where they can find you. And then a couple last questions here. Like we talked about time machines today. So I just want to know if you could pick any age to go back in the time machine and talk to yourself, what age would that be? And what would you say to her?
Ooh, there's so many different ages, to be honest. And I've had conversations with many of these versions of myself. I feel like I would go back to my 17-year-old self.
Yes.
Who was graduating from college and moving in with my mom, and had followed a less than traditional path around psychology and linguistics while all my friends were doing pre-med and pharmacy school, and giving myself the okay that was going to lead me on my path, instead of comparing myself to everybody that was doing pre-med and pharmacy school, and giving myself some grace around that, because I think I just compared myself so much around what my friends were doing and why am I the only one that's not doing that, and trusting that I was trailblazing a different path for myself, even though it didn't look like it didn't feel like it at that time, knowing that somehow I was going to get here to this point, and knowing that I was in touch with myself at a point where it felt like I wasn't. But I think I knew that I wanted a different life for myself. And somehow along the way, I forgot that was real for me. And I tried to then fit into the boxes for years after that. So like I want to come back to that version of me that trusted that was the major that I chose, the path that I chose, the purpose of empathy and communication and expression and people, connections and relationship was at the root of everything that I was doing and why I was doing it. And instead of trying to fit into these other boxes, like just giving myself permission that was okay to follow a different path.
Yeah. Can I go back and clarify? You graduated from college at 17?
No. Thanks for clarifying. Wait, I graduated high school at 17.
Okay.
Oh my God.
Okay. No. I just want to clarify, because then later on I'm going to be like, why didn't I ask you? But honestly, self-doubt is like the true crime story of our life. I think like we crumble with it. We kill so many parts of ourselves when we do that comparison and whatnot. And I think that's a great age to go back and remind ourselves, because fuck, like we take that and we roll with it going into our 20s, our 30s, and so on and so on. And so if we can grab that and tell that comparison part of us to like shut up, sooner, I think, man, we get to soar. So that's a good age to go to. I love that. And I don't see now, I'm not comparing myself, being like, damn, she's graduating college. I'm just like
No, no,
barely
no.
making it to graduating high school at that age.
Well, I was thinking that was an interesting slip then, because I was 17 when I graduated high school. So then I'm actually curious for myself, like, was that actually when I needed to not when I
Yeah.
needed to check my own self-doubt? Did my self-doubt kick in before I graduated college? And if I reflect on that, I would say yes, because even throughout college, I was comparing myself. I failed organic chem because I hated that shit, and everyone else was so gung ho about it. And I'm like, oh God, yuck. But here I am going to psychology class because I want to understand how humans work, and no one else is doing psychology classes. But here I am, like, going deep into that, and then taking philosophy classes and all these other things. So actually, that is a really interesting subconscious slip that came out.
You're going to have a fun Dear Diary moment today.
Yeah.
Yeah, go unpack that shit for sure.
Thank you for
Can't
that.
wait for you. Okay, middle fingers up. So this is the moment. So what do you want to put your middle fingers up to today?
I would love to put my middle finger up to the cultural cages. I didn't think that was going to be it, but I really feel like that was a through line throughout this whole conversation was, what if we just freed ourselves? Like, if your fuck you is the key to unlock yourself.
Yes, right? Absolutely. 100%. I love it. Okay, is there anything that you wish I asked you today that maybe I didn't, or you want to go back and add to, clarify, or anything like that?
There's one
Yeah.
thing that I want to add is Ronnie Rising is the community space slash the collective care that I wish I had. And if you're familiar with Phoenix Rising, Ronnie Rising is the South Asian version of that. If you're not familiar, Phoenix Rising is like when everything gets burned to the ground, whether intentionally or unintentionally, and the phoenix rises from the ashes. This majestic being rises. And I've done this now a million times over and over and over again of evolving and death and rebirth, if you will, and permission to evolve and change. Bringing it to something I said earlier, much earlier, was permission to change. And so Rani Rising is really the community where South Asian women come together and, hey, let's be shoulder to shoulder. Hey, I'm going to call you forward and call you out on your shit very lovingly to rise into your queendom.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, like that's like 4 shirts now, I expect. Like, I'm just saying. That's great. I love that. I think we need to role model that more for each other, because we've been taught to, like, that whole pit against each other, and there can only be one of us in the room, and we see comedians talk about it, we talk about it, we've done it, we've been on both ends of it, and I think it goes beyond the basics of, like, you're so pretty, you look so nice. There's these deep conversations that many of us didn't get to have together, that those of us that maybe did came out with, again, comparison. So to have that place together and role model and learn, and some of us unlearn, so how do we have that kind of community as brown women together? I think that's fantastic. I love that.
Yeah, I think that this comparison, the competition is very survival mode. And, what we even talked about, like being the doctor and whatever it is, it literally would get people out of villages, right? If they had the highest grade, they would be out of the villages. They had the opportunity to go into a school to bring back money for their family. And so the comparison competition runs really deep. It goes deep. And what if it wasn't like that? What if we realized that there was enough space for all of us, and we take turns going up the mountain, and we support each other and pull each other up instead of dragging each other down to the valley? So I truly do believe that there's space for all of us, and we all have different magic and medicine and voice that we can bring to wherever we go. And there's there's importance, there's validity, there's medicine really in your experiences. And so we can grow, we can learn from each other in so many different ways. So yeah, Rani Rising is again, it's like all of these things, everything that I do, I feel like is rooted in the things that I wish that I had when I really needed it. And if it can be a space, if it can be a conversation, if it can be a connection that I can help somebody make, like through Rani Rising, people have met throughout the country, they've met globally. And like, yo, that's dope. That's amazing.
And we have like technology on our side today to do that even more so. So it's a great way to access that kind of, right, that tech support to be able to connect from all over the world, and what's going on in your part, here's what's going on mine, and how do we bridge that together and learn from each other. I think that's fantastic.
It can feel so lonely sometimes, you know, like it, and I can just relate to my own experience. I felt very much like I was the only one in the world sometimes, that I was going through X, Y, and Z experience. And when we have community rooted in truth and support and care for each other,
Yeah.
It's like, wow, okay, I can have these real and raw conversations. I don't have to be all perfect. I can have snot from my nose and still be loved and still be supported and still be held. And yeah, we don't have to go through this life alone. The hyper independence, put that shit to the side.
Totally. I think the other part of that too is like, we sometimes also save the really good, exciting parts of us because there's worry that it'll get taken away, or, the word jealousy comes up a lot with women in our community. And when we're trying to rescript that, it's pretty cool to be around each other and be able to share our success and have other women honor that with you. And then you get to do that with other women who are like, also, hey, guess what? This thing happened for me. And that's a big part that I feel I missed out on a lot with a lot of the women growing up too, was this, we had to hide it away because, God forbid someone else is also going to be just as good. But the more of us at this table, fuck yeah, there's a lot more opportunity, and for me, like I'll leave it at that. I think that's just what it is opportunity rises for us, and that's a nice way to rescript. So any call to action, if there's one thing and only one thing people take from your episode today, like what do you hope that one thing is?
There's one thing I want someone to take away from this, is to know that you are worthy of whatever it is that's on your heart. It sounds a little, however it sounds, like whatever dream, whatever vision you have for yourself, for your life, for your family, it's been placed there for a reason. And what do you need? Who do you need to be by your side to allow that dream to grow instead of stomping it down and suppressing it? If you had the spaciousness, if you watered that seed properly, if you had a beautiful environment with healthy soil and proper sunlight and support, if that dream were to actually grow, what would you do? How would you create that for yourself, for your life, for the collective? And permission to do so. Give yourself permission to do so, to create that for your life.
Well said. I love that. Okay, so where, again, tell us, socials, where can people reach out to you? I'm sure a lot of people are going to want to connect with you for so many things that you said today. And where would be the best place to find you?
Yes, so Instagram is where I'm most active, I would say. You can find me, I'm sure we'll put my handle below in the show notes, but my handle is I am, and then my first name, last name. So I am Mohini Gima. Please message me. Like, I want to connect with you. If you connected with something that was shared today, if you have questions about something that was shared today, please, my DMs are open. I would love to have a conversation with you. Take a listen to Rani Radio, share it with your people, and do that thing that the podcasters say to do, like follow and rate and share. I also have an email series called Rani Revolutionary Relationships, and I share about what is it like to have revolutionary relationships as a South Asian Rani, as a Rani who is truly wanting to not just have meh, surface level relationships, but if you want to actually have relationships that are changing the collective, that are changing the world, it's starting with you and your relationships with yourself and those around you. So that's also another place to connect. All of that can be found on my website, ranirising.com/ find me on Instagram, and it's in my bio and all that stuff.
I love it. Mohini, I want to thank you for reaching out, for spending time with me today, spending time with everyone that's viewing and listening. We say these conversations are door openers. We're just scratching the surface. We're only getting started. And so I appreciate that you reached out, contributed to a conversation, and there's going to be so many more that are also going to reach out because of you, because of this episode, to keep this conversation going. And so whether you reach out to me or Mohini, you know where we are, but please do, because there's no community without us having these conversations. And I'm grateful. I imagine you are too.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you, Kieran. Thank you to the community. Thank you for the space and the opportunity. And I'm very grateful for the ethers, bringing us together, for our ancestors bringing us together.
Yeah. And for that exhale right there, I think that was the big one right there that I'm grateful for when we get to do that. So thank you.
Thank you. Yay.